So now we are going to move to the first talk. And the first block is actually causal inference in practice. We really want to understand beyond academic work and what we learn in academia sometimes, how it works in companies in practice with specific constraints, challenges. And to do so, it will be Robson Tigre who will going to make this presentation about lessons from fintech and e-commerce. So Robson is a marketing science growth lead at Recast, and he also wrote this book that you can read online for free, if I'm not mistaken, which is Everyday Causal Inference. And indeed, as his book shows, he really cares about making causal inference reliable and accessible to a wider audience. So, Robson, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm not going to say name by name, but the other participants, I've read your books, your papers. I attended a course of one of the participants. There is a blog about marketing as well, so I'm really happy to be here with you all. Uh, I'm going to start to talk about causal inference in practice simply because I've been in the 10 last years or so practicing causal inference from academia, from my grad student days, and then PhD, and then I was a university professor, and then I went to a fintech, and then I went to e-commerce, and then I went to a crypto company, and now I'm in a marketing science company. So I've been practicing through different lenses, and it would be a pleasure to connect with you. Here's the QR code to my LinkedIn and my social networks here. And as Quentin said, I authored a book. I still owe you the last two chapters, but it's free to read. And I have a signed contract with CRC Press, and that's it. Okay, so now that I talked a lot about myself, let's talk about the field. Um, Causal inference is becoming practical, not in the sense only of having applications, but that people that work with analytics, for instance, and that were fully descriptive, use it fully descriptive statistics are now caring about measuring the effects of things. And as this Google Trends graph shows, we are in an all-time high for causal inference, right? Uh, and companies care about this, right? If you look through this list, those are clickable links. I intend to share the slides later. Those are blogs from companies. Amazon Science, for instance, has a section about causal inference experimentation. Uh, Netflix, as you see here, some tabs of Netflix. I was not watching series. I was reading some articles about long-term effects from experiments. Those are great, how can I say, repository of uh, causal inference content. And why do business care about causal inference now? Because the ROI, the return on investment, is essentially a causal measure, right? So you don't want to know how much money you get versus how much money you spent overall. Usually, when you launch a feature or a policy or a product, you want to know, hey, I'm investing this X amount of dollars here. What am I getting back from this investment, right? And this that I get back is called incremental profit, is the profit that is generated by this type of action, right? So how do we isolate this increment part? This is essentially what causal inference does. And that's why business care about causal inference, and they are understanding the need for causal inference. But it's not so like machine learning works that you have some holdout metrics and validation metrics that they work like a thermometer for how wrong you are. Causal inference, in causal inference, you don't have this training part that you can validate elsewhere. Well, you do have in some very specific settings, but generally what you have to do is to state your hypothesis and to pick a method and to get a number and then to say, hey, let's falsify. Let's see if this number breaks if we change this hypothesis, or let's see how sensitive this number is if I include this or that conditions on top of that, right? So that's what makes causal inference hard and, in my perception, interesting, like this detective job of getting through a number. And we were talking about AI, and AI can help a lot. I saw a paper that uses AI agents to try to find instrumental variables. People know that finding a valid instrument is hard, and you have a lot of lawyer work to defend your instrument. So there are several applications in which AI can help causal inference, but uh, it's not about AI, right? Those are standard methods for those that are not familiar. Like those are really textbook tools for causal inference that I used in my job that I've described in this last decade. For instance, regression discontinuity design, usually fintechs, they score clients based on how reliable they feel they are in terms of some metrics, in terms of paying back a loan. So they set some policies based on those scores that are abrupt. Like if you are below this score, this certain score, you don't have access to credit. If you are above it, you have access to credit. And those breaks that give us what we call exogenous variation can help us understand, well, if I give credit to those people and my fintech doesn't lend at the moment, how likely are they to pay back, or how likely are they to consume other services and features of my fintech, or how likely are they to make my fintech their main bank, let's say. So this type of quantification help a lot those in this case, a fintech, to understand what are the spillover effects of one policy through other products and services of this fintech, which helps them to estimate a better ROI. It's not a return on investment only on a single dimension, but on more globally, right? And to be honest, Quentin, I didn't track the time, so I have no idea how many minutes I have left. But please just, I can see your face. Please just make some, just mimic how
I'll
long
come
I
back
have
two
to
minutes.
explain.
I'll come back 2 minutes before you're done, but you still have plenty of time. You're just
Okay,
7 minutes in.
okay, thank you. Well, instrumental variables, usually that's great when I worked at Mercado Libre, and but you can, if you're not familiar with it, think about Amazon. Amazon has discounts and offers, and you get a lot of notifications. But sometimes we want to understand what is the effect, not of sending someone a voucher, but the effect of this person using a voucher, because you want to lock in those users, right? You want to say, hey, this person used my feature or used my opportunity. What was the effect of using? Because if this is worth, I can try harder to make people use my features, right? So this is what we call encouragement design, and you can use a standard technique called instrumental variables, or difference in differences. Usually we want to know, hey, what happens to a client once a specific high value action was activated by this client? I don't know. The person bought a huge television for the World Cup. What happens after? What patterns of consumption changed after that? And those understanding help the e-commerce, for instance, to adapt their strategy to try to make people buy more because this is what they want to do, right? But it's not so simple as using a textbook tool to try to elicit effects. It can get you a long way ahead of other people, right? And it will, um, especially in marketing, a lot of people lack this understanding of incrementality and how to elicit it. So, of course, study the basics, but there are a lot of harder problems that are being solved in academia or in other companies. For instance, when I was in my PhD, we didn't talk much about a treatment not being absorbing. If you use the difference in differences, you were assuming that this person was treated and remained treated through all the period, right? And now we have, for instance, the paper of Chase Martin that explains how can we estimate the effect that is super useful in the industry. Because, for instance, when you subscribe to Amazon Prime, you can imagine that this person is not going in perpetuity to pay for it, right? Sometimes the person churns, so it helps a lot applications in industry. Also, interference in two-sided markets. For instance, when Uber does a super discount in a neighborhood, it's contaminating another neighborhood that is nearby because people there could be more likely to request a ride, and users and drivers could be going to this area instead of serving that other nearby neighborhood. So you have an interference between. So all of this, there are different approaches, either by trying to model structurally those things or eliciting how these interferences occur. But there's a huge list of problems to be solved. And academically, we have people here trying to solve this, but there are also a lot of clever people in the industry launching white papers or published papers in those areas. And well, if you ask me where the future of causal inference is in terms, I'm not saying in terms of uh, beautiful solutions for the problems, but in terms of being super useful and applicable by huge companies that have a lot of users, is targeting. Like when you use some models that try to measure the effect not only for the average user, but also for different segments of users, right? And here I have an example uh, that every company, like a marketplace, would like to understand what users are really likely to buy something just because they are this way. They would buy anyway. You don't need to incentivize them to do anything, right? And what users would be uh, super well responding in terms of an intervention, right? Because when a user like me buy a lot of electronics and computer peripherals, and I go to Amazon and it offers me a Logitech keyboard, it doesn't need to give me a huge discount. I would buy anyway. But my father, he would buy for a huge discount. So I don't want to burn credits or coupons or vouchers with a user like me, but I want to burn them with someone like my father that is responsive through those incentives, right? So, and there are, for instance, causal forests or different types of learners that can estimate how different users respond to different interventions. And after that learning, which usually occurs through, a random experiment, you can, let's say, transport this learning and design a policy to say, well, outside of the realm of an experiment, how can I apply this learning to treat those other people that I've never seen before, right? So I think this is the future, at least in my area of expertise. And Quentin, sorry, I have how many minutes do I have? 2 minutes more. Thank you. But I would say that, well, since we're starting here, go for the basics, read the textbooks, uh, and work on your communication, because this for me was the hardest part. When I was a PhD student, then I became a postdoc, then I went to academia and I talked to people and I didn't need to translate anything. But when you go to work with someone that is on user experience and is a designer, this person doesn't have the same jargons and doesn't understand. So please do yourself a favor and meet them where they are, talk in their language, explain counterfactuals, not using this ugly word, but I don't know, parallel universes or however you can make an analogy, because, well, the rule here is to help others, right? It's not to sound clever. And since I only have 2 minutes, I would like to show this that I developed that should help a lot of people here that are trying to practice. A lot of people that I mentored said, well, I can't practice causal inference in my work because I don't have, nobody assigns me. So you could download this skill for Cloud Code, for Codex, create data sets using these causal exercise skills. Or if you are like a junior working on causal inference problems, it can also help you, like a buddy that can say, hey, this assumption is violated, don't go this way, try to go this other way. And that's it. Well, everything I read, I try to figure out what it really means and what it's saying. This is a saying by Richard Feynman, and that's what I try to do. We could talk in different levels here, but I just try to help most of the people that that didn't have access to causal inference before. And that was a pleasure. I hope we connect. That's it. Thank you, Quentin.
Thank you very much, Robson. Well, I'll ask a question. Can you go back one slide? Because I'm sure some people would like to look for this URL and open this window now. So thank you very much for opening or continuing with the talks. Actually, you mentioned something very important about communication. And I think that's one of the main thing I talk with a practitioner. And can you say a bit more about this? Because often it's a clear barrier in industry how you communicate, for example, with decision makers, with other, for example, the people coming from predictive inference. How do you communicate about when do you need causal inference, causal results, and all these things? Can you say a few words about this before moving to
Yeah,
the next
sure.
talk?
I would advise, based on my experience, to try to understand what people need. And causal inference is not the answer all the time, every time. It has costs, and it's not worth going there and say, hey, you need a randomized experiment with, I don't know, 50,000 users. So first, what is the question that your stakeholder needs to be answered? Most of the time, they don't even know. So try to help eliciting this. And I would say, Quentin, jargons are better for talks like this, in which we know how to talk to each other and we feel good talking about this in this little club of causal inference. But in the outside world, just just use analogies, examples, and try to have in mind that a lot of people in leadership, they did an MBA and they have their own jargon and they are not throwing up those jargons at you. So be considerate and try to do the same.
Thank you very much. And you did
Thank you.
this actually opening by saying ROI is a causal metric, and that's also an entry I often use because it talks very much to business people and decision maker. Thank you very much, Robson.
Thank
It
you.
was a pleasure to have you.